With the 2025 F1 season just coming to a close, I asked you for your best hot takes of the 2025 season. And today, we're going to be looking at them, and I'll weigh my opinion in a bit. Quick reminder, these are hot takes, meaning they aren't meant for everyone to agree on them, so don't attack me if your opinion doesn't align with mine, but I'm more than happy to hear your opinions in the comments. But let's get going. First comes the one you probably clicked on this video for, and I've gotten comments for both sides of whether Lando Norris deserves the championship or not. In my opinion, the whole idea of a driver deserving a championship is a bit odd, because I don't see why there needs to be a further level of approval than actually just winning the championship. I know there are a lot of Lando Norris haters, and because of my lack of interaction with other F1 fans, I don't really know the reason why people despise him so much. Like, I get a driver not being your favorite, but I genuinely see people just hate this man. And I think no matter what he accomplished, they wouldn't really approve of it. At face value, he won races, stayed in contention and closed out the year, and was it the strongest championship campaign? No. But does it need to be? Also no. We've had Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton as the only champions for the past 8 or so years, so I think people forget that winning a championship doesn't mean you have to instantly be contesting for greatest of all time. And machinery did play a big part in him winning, but you can make that same argument for every world champion there's ever been to a certain degree. In my opinion, he won the championship fair and square, and to me, the argument ends there. Alright, next we got that Franco Colapinto was not the worst driver of the 2025 season. Well, Colapinto was last in the driver standings, except for if you count Jack Doohan. But I actually do agree with this take. Colapinto didn't score any points, but it really isn't like Alpine wasn't the worst car on the grid, and he didn't have a single DNF throughout his entire time this season, with the only issue being his gearbox at Silverstone, which stopped him from racing altogether. Keeping the car on the track was important, especially for a backmarker team, and I'm not saying he did anything incredible, but I think it was just enough to keep him out of that bottom spot. That bottom spot to me has to be Yuki Tsunoda. I have nothing against Yuki Tsunoda, and I probably like him more than the average fan does, but it's just hard to credit him when Max Verstappen is 2 points off the championship, and Tsunoda is 2 positions off being tied for last in the championship. I fully understand the Red Bull car was tough to drive and built around Verstappen's driving, which can be hard for others to adjust to, but the margin is just too big. I think Red Bull's starting to realize that they should have been a bit more appreciative of the results Sergio Perez was putting out, because it's looking like his shoes are pretty hard to fill, even when everyone thought he was underperforming. Another one I've seen is to do with the swap between Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson, and how Lawson should have had more time, and I do agree with that. It's definitely not a question that Yuki's financial situation with Honda helped him get into the Red Bull seat, because it did, but we also know how cutthroat and impatient Red Bull tends to be with their junior drivers, which is why I think Lawson should have been given a few more races to at least be accustomed to being a part of the team, because all he had was the first 2 races and a sprint in China, and there really isn't much you can prove or disappoint in that time frame. Give him at least 4 more races, and that's still scraping the bottom of the barrel, but I think that's the minimum a team should wait before even considering to swap a driver out. And if that were the case, who knows, we could still see Lawson driving at Red Bull right now, but on the bright side, at least he was retained at Racing Bulls, and despite being promoted and demoted, I still have hope that Lawson can succeed in F1, whether it be at Red Bull or not. Next we have that Kimi Antonelli will be the youngest F1 champion, and this one is good, because in the next few years, we actually will know the answer. Kimi Antonelli is currently 19, and the youngest F1 champion was Sebastian Vettel when he was 23 years old and 133 days old. With Antonelli's birthday being later in the year, that would mean he has the next 4 seasons to win a championship to be the youngest to win ever. The truth is, most of the answer here will lie in the machinery at Mercedes, and if they can deliver a car that has championship level capabilities, and based on most of the reports for next year with power units, it could be strong for them. But the issue there is George Russell. In my opinion, George Russell was sneakily one of, if not the best driver of this season, and I really doubt that Antonelli could beat George Russell in a championship battle in the same car if he keeps his current form. Obviously, Antonelli has a lot of room to grow in the next couple of years, and could be on a whole nother level in only a season time. But as of right now, I think there are too many factors that can outweigh Antonelli winning in the next 4 seasons. But like I said, it is possible. Next one is definitely one that not many people are going to like, and that's that Stroll did better than Fernando Alonso this year. While I don't directly agree with the fact that Stroll did better than Alonso, I do think that he did a lot better than people give him credit for. Lance Stroll is probably the most polarizing figure in all of F1, and I think he could solve world hunger and people would still complain that he didn't give everyone $1,000 each. The fact of the matter is, he did finish 16th in the championship, and he probably was the difference between the 3-point gap to move from 7th to 6th in the Constructors, but he also scored a good bit of points and started the season pretty well. He just didn't have any consistency. Fernando Alonso was regularly in the points after Spain, and Lance had some good performances with some P7s, but then he would follow it way outside of the points. In reality, he wasn't really close to Alonso, especially considering how unlucky the start of the season started for Fernando, but he did do better than people are giving him credit for. Next take is that Max Verstappen would have won the championship if he spent the first half of the season in the V-Carb car. With such a small margin of only 2 points, there's so many small things that could have been different to put the championship in Max's hands. And considering the V-Carb car was titled to be a lot easier to drive, we don't really have an actual clue of whether it was faster or just easier to adjust to. And considering the Red Bull car was built in priority of Max Verstappen, we won't ever really know which one would have been better. But like I said, all it would have to do is make the smallest change, like one position better in any race, or even the fact that the V-Carb team could have a slightly better pit stop than the Red Bull team. But it's just too much to factor in. The only real place in this entire season where I think you can actually say what if this was done differently and have a valid point is Verstappen's penalty in Spain. He finished 5th on track but had that 10-second penalty for deliberately hitting Russell and lost out on 9 points by ending up 10th. And the only reason I say this is the place that can be changed is because it had nothing to do with the car, nothing to do with external conditions, simply just Verstappen's doing. Anything else that you try to change causes too much variance to these what-ifs that could change multiple things in later races, but I think if he were to have been in the V-Carb at the start of the season, it would probably have a similar outcome to what it currently had anyways. After that, we had the McLaren had a point in not choosing a number 1 driver, and that they didn't favor Lando. I actually do agree with this, but before you come for me, listen to why first. The idea of having no number 1 driver at a top team is one I like, but the way that McLaren executed it was wrong in my eyes. If you're going to have 2 drivers on a level playing field, you have to make sure you keep it fair, and the issue with McLaren is that they tried so hard to make it fair that they inherently caused themselves issues. Monza was the perfect example of this, where there was a lot of people thinking that McLaren favored Norris. Even though Norris was first on track, they boxed Oscar Piastri first to cover off the undercut from Charles Leclerc, and consequently, undercut Norris through a mix of both pitting first and a slow stop for Norris. But all that did was set up a lose-lose scenario for him. If you have Piastri stay in front, people would complain that they favored Piastri for boxing him first even though Norris was ahead. And with what they did do of swapping positions, people say they favored Norris because of letting him through. Either way, they set themselves up for this by pitting Oscar first and overcomplicating the matter. If you decide to not have a number 1 driver, I think you have to stick to fundamentals and box the driver ahead on track, even if that does hurt the driver behind a bit, because you aren't favoring a specific driver, you're simply favoring the one ahead, and it creates a better environment, and to me the idea of having no number 1s is good, but the way McLaren handled it is what I don't agree with. For the next one, I'm combining 2 takes into one because they're kind of similar, and that's that Behrman was the best and most consistent rookie, and that every rookie was incredible this year, other than Antonelli. One thing that this comment misses is the 2 Alpine rookies, and I don't blame you because they were a bit forgettable, but for the other rookies, all 5 did well to me. Lawson was probably the weakest of the 5, but he also had to recover from being dropped from Red Bull after 2 weekends, so that had to be a big mental hit to overcome, and he picked it up in the back half of the season. I will say Antonelli was great this season, but not the best, because where he had his highs, he had his mid-season slump, which is completely fine because he's a developing driver, but the other rookies were a bit more consistent, giving their machinery. Bortoleto was very good in my eyes and had some solid performances, but even though he's probably my favorite rookie, he wasn't the very top, because that's a heads up between Hadjar and Behrman. I do agree that Behrman was definitely the most consistent, as he was finishing in the top 12 almost every week, and the standout performances of P6 in the Netherlands and Brazil, and the P4 in Mexico were very strong. Hadjar also placed in that top 12 almost every week and had that podium in the Netherlands, so it's really up to you which one you want to choose out of them. I would have to say Behrman, but if you said Hadjar, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. But it's hard to go wrong with any of this year's rookies, other than the Alpines, that is. Staying on that rookie topic, we have that Arvid Lindblad is not ready for F1. Now, one thing I will say is I don't think I have the best eye for this sort of thing, as last year I thought Hadjar wasn't ready for F1, and he definitely proved me wrong, but in general, I find it hard to assess the levels with how useless the junior categories are nowadays. Lindblad is a very high-risk driver pickup, just like Kimi Antonelli was, because he has rushed through the juniors, but my issue there is that Red Bull is much more impatient than Mercedes. As we saw with Lawson, Red Bull don't really give much time to assess talent, so there are two ways Lindblad can succeed. Either he starts performing out the gate, or with the departure of Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, Red Bull gets more patient. Either way, because F2 is so far in machinery from F1, it doesn't really assess the talent well, and the only real way to find out if he is ready is once the season starts, so we'll just have to wait and see. Another Red Bull one is that Max Verstappen's driving style is detrimental for the team because they can't make a car that accommodates both drivers. I do agree with this because in past years, Red Bull has just thrown away the Constructors' Championship for Max to do better in the Drivers' Championship, and even though it has been working, it's not really a longevity play. The Constructors' Championship is important, and they're tarnishing drivers' careers like Sergio Perez going from his prime to getting thrashed, and both Lawson and Tsunoda getting disregarded by the team. And although I don't want it to happen, the same will probably happen with Hadjar. It also creates a question for the future, because how's the team going to adjust when Verstappen is no longer there? Because it's not like Verstappen level talent is just easy to find. Regardless, I do think it is worse for the team, but like I said earlier, maybe it changes a bit with the personnel changes, but I really do doubt it. Next is definitely another one that most people won't agree with, and that's that Lewis Hamilton will be fired within 5 races of the 2026 season, and Ferrari will try to hook Carlos Sainz back into the team. But Carlos Sainz will say no. There's definitely a lot to unpack here, but I could just never see Lewis Hamilton getting sacked from a team mid-season. 2025 wasn't the best for Lewis, and I can acknowledge that. But if it doesn't improve next year, I could see them parting ways at the end of the season, just not midway through. If he doesn't perform, he is a PR goldmine for the team that likely brings in a lot of sponsors. I mean, Lewis Hamilton is as mainstream as it gets in F1. Most people who don't know a thing about F1 have probably heard of Lewis Hamilton. I mean, the guy's in Fortnite. How much more mainstream can you get than Fortnite? Anyways, if they did get rid of him at the end of the season, I think the next driver they would go to would be Ollie Behrman, but Charles Leclerc is also rumored to leave at the end of 2026, and if that were to happen also, and Ferrari needed 2 drivers, then I could see them reaching out to Sainz. And I think he would say no. Sainz had a great season with Williams, and Williams themselves had a great season as well. And with the Mercedes power units looking like the ones to have next year, I don't think Sainz will want to leave that project. That would leave Ferrari to seek a junior driver from their academy like Dino Beganovic or Rafael Camara, or even Leonardo Fornaroli if they wanted an Italian in their car. And if not, they might try to poach George Russell from Mercedes, or Oscar Piastri if he wants to leave McLaren. Either way, I could see Hamilton and Ferrari parting ways, just not mid-season. Alright, I'm going to end it there. If you want to see another episode of this, let me know and leave more hot takes in the comments, and let me know if you disagree or agree with my opinions also.